All right, today we're going to speak about you guys, or us guys, rather. We people, we the people. Do we hold any value?
Huh?
No, let me explain. Hold on.
We hold these truths to be self-evident.
No, this is not a class on. We're far away from July 4th. So everybody who knows a little bit about Jewish history knows we had a temple and we had a tabernacle, we had this and we had Troy too, right? And so those guys, they were good. They were big shots. We, what are we? We're nobodies. They were busy bringing sacrifices. I don't know. They were busy composing Mishnah and Talmud and Medrash, and what can we possibly can we contribute? It's almost like, Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Shmuel, two greatest members of the Mishnah period, are having a discussion, and you're sitting there and you say, "I concur." Like, no one's asking you. You're not even a fly, right? So the question is, what can we possibly bring to the table that hasn't been done? What can we contribute to Judaism? Do our mitzvahs mean anything? I mean, you read about the mitzvahs of those guys, fine. But us, we're and this question could be asked. Somebody wasn't always religious, or sometimes even a person grew up religious, but they just did it because everyone else is going to shul. So what are you doing? You're not going to walk against the grain on Saturday. Everyone's going to shul, so. Like the story I told on Shabbos of the guy who got online to get mashke, vodka from the Rebbe. Everyone got online to get a bottle of vodka, so he also got online, right? Why? He don't know. So sometimes you have that feeling that you're doing it, but you lack the background, you lack the depth. So the question is, have you ever felt that our lack of background, a lack of understanding, a lack of appreciation limits the spiritual capacity for mitzvahs? That is the question on the screen. That is the question we're going to discuss today. So in order to answer this question, we are going to focus on one of the favorite customs in the Pesach seder, and that is Kais Shel Elio, Elijah's cup. Elijah gets a chair, he gets a cup. If he only gets a staff and an orb, he'd be King Elijah, but no. So, timing. So it's our Pesach, the phone's gonna ring. Sorry about that. So, it's one of the biggest teases. It's one of the biggest teases. We put wine on the table, and you can't drink it. If you want to know what hell looks like, right? You put wine on the table, you can't you can't drink it. So the question is why. So let's start off. There's so many stories, Elio and other stories, but I'll give you one of the favorites, a favorite one. The story.
23.
Yeah, probably. The story. Listen, Elio and Navi's been around together with the Jewish people for a long time, so there's going to be a lot of stories. Story is told by the halachic originator. It's called the halachic, the holy originator. He lived in the middle of the 1800s. And he tells a story. There was once a rich man, and he gave a lot of tzedakah, and he was an upstanding, good guy. What happened is that Pesach was his favorite holiday. And not only Pesach was his favorite holiday, the Kais of Elio was his favorite part of the holiday. And he bought this beautiful golden goblet for Elio's cup. And every year it came time for Pesach, he would take it out and he would shine it until it was gleaming, and then every year he would add another jewel or diamond or something. It was absolutely beautiful. And he wouldn't put in, just any grape juice or wine into the cup. He made sure to buy the best wine, or like Michael J. calls it, the hoity-toity wine, into the cup.
Strawberry Ripple.
Yeah, Manischewitz, real age Manischewitz. It's been in the back of the cabinet for 13 years.
So time to bar mitzvah, you gotta
Yeah,
use it.
exactly. On a side story, my sister is older than me. I'm the youngest. Oh, everyone's older.
You're all older than you.
Yeah, I'm the youngest. So my sister got married, well after me. She got married, in the religious circles a little late. But my mother was hoping she would get engaged. So one time by duty free, she got like this 21-year-old bottle of Shivas. I think it was Shivas, expensive whiskey. And anyway, so every time I wanted to open the Shivas, she's like, no, I'm saving it for the engagement party. Saving it for the engagement party. And then my sister got engaged, so I ran to the closet. I grabbed the bottle. My mom was like, "Hey!" I'm like, whoa.
This is an engagement.
Whoa. Now what are you gonna say? We have to open it up. Baruch Hashem. Anyway, so this guy. So what happened was this guy's wheel of fortune turned. And from being rich, he lost his money, and he had to start selling off some of his possessions, just to pay the bills. Until it came to a point where he mamish had nothing. He was coming for Pesach. He tells his wife, "Listen, I think we're gonna have to sell the golden cup." His wife says, "This is garbage sugar. You're absolutely crazy. You can't. So we need to buy matzah and wine." So his wife says, "But that's our most prized possession." I understand, but you can't. Then his wife came up with a whole thing. Says, "You're not allowed to sell it." So what do you mean? It doesn't belong to you. It belongs to Eliyahu Navi. Right? It's called Eliyahu's cup. It's his cup. It's not your cup. You can't sell it. She says, "Listen," he tells her husband, says, "Have a little faith. Hashem's going to help." All right. So if she's not worried, he's not worried. So what happened was he goes to shul early, nothing to do, there's nothing to cook. He goes to shul early on Erev Pesach. He starts learning, at least he'll have his spiritual seder. Comes home after shul and there's everything: matzah, wine, chicken, meat, fish, whatever. So he says, "What happened?" He says, "Some guy, long white beard, came and said, 'Can I join you for the seder?' So he said, 'We don't have anything.' 'Don't worry about it.' And he came in, he brought everything, and then he left. So it must be Eliyahu Navi. And then later, when they came to the time of Eliyahu Navi's cup, the guy, the long white beard, came. He says, "Because you guys had such great self-sacrifice for me," it was Eliyahu. Says, "Hashem told me to reward you guys, and you're never going to want for anything again." And that was, and it's a story. And there are many stories of Eliyahu Navi who came to help a Jewish person, just in the nick of time. But let's get into the idea of wine. Okay, how many cups of wine do we have at a seder?
You mean how many do we drink?
Well, there's an argument. The answer to everything is there's an argument. Exactly. You should know by now, Barbara. There's always an argument.
Answer is right, no matter what.
So if you look at text 1a, we'll learn that this idea of drinking wine by the seder is not optional. It's obligatory. You have to. In fact, according to halacha, if a person drinks and wine and then eats the matzah, and then very soon afterwards he can't hold down his food, he has to do it all over again. He has to eat the matzah, drink the wine again. Drinking the wine on the first 2 nights of Pesach, it's not a nice thing. No, you have to look. If you look at text number 1, the Mishnah says, no matter how poor a person is, they have to get money from the food bank. In the olden days, every single community had a food bank, and financial assistance. But the financial assistance in the food bank was given on a weekly basis, not like in America where, welcome to Medicaid and welcome to Section 8, and we'll see you, when you're 65. In the Jewish community didn't work that way. It was once a week. Look for a job. You can't find a job, or your job's not paying enough. Okay, well, I'll help you for this week. And this was a mandatory tax, by the way. It wasn't optional. If you lived in the community, you had to pay into this fund. It wasn't, and the court can garnish your wages. The way it worked in the old communities, you should know, the community leaders, the rabbis, whatever it is, they would. How big do you think these communities were? 15, 20, 50 families. I mean, they knew everybody, and they knew what you did, and they knew how much you had. And they came with a list and said, this is what you're paying. Over. That's the way it was.
Federal government.
Yeah.
The IRS.
No, it was. No, it was. But the difference is, it was locally funded.
Cameras everywhere.
It was locally funded for local thing. It was a lot better managed. Anyway, so everyone has to get. Now, and then the Gemara says there's an argument between the rabbis and Reb Tarfon. This is text number 2. Text number 2 is the rabbis say you drink 4 cups. Sorry, 1b, not 2b. Sorry, 1b. The rabbis say you drink 4 cups, and Reb Tarfon says you drink 5 cups. All the question, at the end when you're praising God, so there's we drink a 5th cup. Now, who is the halacha like? Whose halacha do we follow? Not Hillel. No. The rabbis. The rabbis say Hallel. Sorry, Rabbi Yehuda. Who is it that says we drink 4 cups? The rabbis or Rabbi Yehuda? Yeah, the rabbis. Yeah, the rabbis. When it says the rabbis, it means the majority of the rabbis. Now, whose opinion do we follow? The rabbis. So we drink 4 cups. Not only that, if you look in text number 2, after the 4th cup, you're not allowed to eat or drink anything except water. When you finish the meal and you have dafikomen, the only thing you're allowed to have afterward are the 2 cups. After the 4th cup of wine, you can't have anything. The only thing you can have is water. So now, if the 4 cups are right, well, we're pouring a 5th cup. If the 5th cup is right, we drink it. So what do we do? Why are we asking this question? Because many times in halacha we try to satisfy both opinions, right? For example, the mezuzah, right? Mezuzah at a tilt. Why is the mezuzah at a tilt?
Because one school says vertical, another school says horizontal.
Yeah, that's why. Yeah. So now the halacha is it has to be vertical, but in order to recognize other opinions, so we tilt it. The Sephardim, by the way, they don't tilt the mezuzah. They put the mezuzah straight. They don't. It's the Sephardim. Only
Are
Ashkenaz.
they out of their mind?
What?
Are they out of their mind? It's supposed to be at an angle.
That's the Ashkenazim. Yeah, don't curse at the Sephardim. They're going to be eating rice and beans next week, and you're going to be screaming.
Beans.
So the rabbis came up with this idea. The rabbis came up with the idea is that you can't drink anything after the 4th cup. Yeah, but what we're gonna do is we're gonna pour it. We're gonna pour it, and then we won't drink it. So we recognize Reb Tarfon. His opinion, we drink for a 5th cup, but you can't go against the majority of the rabbis. Right? When there's a dispute in Jewish law, what do? You go like the majority. The majority is you do 4 cups. So we pour the 5th cup. Good. But the problem with that is, why are we calling it Eliyahu's cup? Let's call it Reb Tarfon's cup. How did Eliyahu get over here? We just needed a name. Not everybody knows the name Tarfon. More people know the name Eliyahu. I don't know. When's the last time we saw a Jewish kid named Tarfon? Right.
He didn't get along with anybody, so
Yeah.
what are you going to do?
So the answer is the answer is like this. Here. Here we go. We did text number 2 and okay. Sorry, I'm a little behind with the slides. So the answer to our question is that Eliyahu is associated with the Messianic redemption. And he's associated with clarification. Let me give you a little history over here. Although it's true that that tradition goes from Moses to Joshua, and we have a whole list, if you open up Maimonides, but there's actually, I'm saying, if you go open Maimonides in the generations, there's a bunch of different rabbis. But there's actually, from Moses to Eliyahu, it's very quick. Why? Eliyahu Navi had a teacher. His name was Achia Hashiloni. You ever heard of that name before? Achia Hashiloni?
No. Never heard it.
I never heard of it.
No?
No.
News to me.
He runs a shmata business.
You're
No.
not pulling it out of your
So Eliyahu Navi's teacher was Achia Shalini. Achia Shalini lived an incredible long life. He was a young boy, doesn't say how young, at the time of the Exodus. That means he learned Torah under Moshe. He was alive to teach Eliyahu Navi. Now, the temple was built about, I hope I'm not speaking out of turn here, 500 years after they went in, 14 years Shiloh, 369 was in Shiloh, and then you had like 75 something years. I think it's about 500 years, around there, give or take 500 years. And then you had Shlomo Melech, and Eliyahu Navi lives after the split of the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. He's a prophet in the northern kingdom. So we're talking about Achia Shalini lived a good 700 years. We don't know exactly because it doesn't say exactly when he died. So why is Eliyahu Navi going to clarify problems? Is because why do we have problems? Because we forgot, right? In the olden days, when Moshe was around, very old days, there wasn't such thing as problems. You had a question, went to Moshe, bam, you Googled Moses, and you got the answer, right? In fact, if Moses didn't know the answer, what did he do? He said, hold on,
Oh, that's the boss.
I'll ask God. Like we see in the book of Numbers, when the girls of Tzalachad come and say, we want our father's plot of land. Moshe said, I don't know. God only told me he goes by the boy. But because usually people have boys. What if someone doesn't have boys? I don't know. Let me go ask God, right? Or like when people are impure by Passover, do they lose it? So they say, I don't know. Let me ask God. God told him no. There's a concept of second Passover, right? If for some reason you can't make it to the temple. So there were no such thing as problems because you had an issue. You got clarification immediately. The problem is when Moshe dies, the Gemara says, or Medrash, so the 1,700 laws were forgotten on that day and had to be relearned. So you can imagine, through the course of generations, a lot of things were forgotten. But let's say you have Moshe, Achia Shalini, Eliyahu Navi. There's not much that's forgotten there because the thread of tradition, of oral tradition and teaching is right there. So now we're not sure what to do. 4 cups or 5 cups. So we put the 5th cup on the table. Why? To satisfy our Tafrin. And we're calling it Eliyahu's cup because Eliyahu, nobody's going to tell us. 4 cups, 5 cups, maybe have a 6th cup. Why not? Right? Right? By the way, it doesn't mean you're only allowed to have 4 cups during the seder. Because during the meal, you could drink wine. Because it's not a mitzvah cup. There are 4 cups that are a mitzvah cup. Those cups you have to drink. Then if you want to drink more during the meal, like Barber is a shik. Yeah.
And the wine for the mitzvah has to be red.
Yes. Has
Why?
to. Has to do with the generally speaking, you're supposed to make bracha on red wine.
Okay.
That's number 1. Number 2, I think also with Pesach specifically has to do with the
But
on the doorpost. Yeah. Eric, can you pour me a cup of water, please?
Yes.
Thank you. So in fact, many times in the Gemara, when we don't have the answer, the rabbis are going back and forth, and the rabbis end off teiku. Teiku means let the question stand. Let the question stand until when? Until what? It says until Eliyahu Navi comes. In fact, if you look at text number 3, the Shalah says that
What a magnetic personality.
that the Shalah says that teiku stands for Eliyahu Tishbi. Eliyahu is called Eliyahu Tishbi. By the way, and something, since we're talking about Eliyahu, we don't know when he was born. We know about how his so to speak device. Thank you very much. If you look at the book of Kings, all the other leaders we have some kind of genealogy, where they came from. Eliyahu Navi says this guy came. Eliyahu Hatishbi. What that means? But we're assuming it means he came from this place called Tishbi. Tishbi could also mean Toshav, he was a resident. The Medrash says, actually, Eliyahu Navi used to exist under a different name, a different alias. His name was Pinchas. You heard of Pinchas, Phineas?
Yeah.
You remember the story when Pinchas...
Yeah. Spear right through the.
Yeah. Pinchas kills Zimri and Cosby, the guys, the leader of the tribe of Shimon,
Right.
and the Midianite princess. So it says, skewered him, exactly. Shish kebab. So it says, Hashem said, he gave, says, Hineni noisen lo brisi shalom, I'm giving him my covenant. So it literally means that he's going to become a Kohen. But then throughout the book of Samuel, of Judges and Samuel, we have this guy pop up. The rabbi said, who's that? Who's this guy? Pinchas. And it says Pinchas hu Eliyahu. Pinchas is the Eliyahu. And they have very similar character traits, by the way. They were both zealots. Eliyahu didn't stand for garbage. He hated falseness. In fact, we're going to talk about why he's the one that comes to the seder. Why Eliyahu Navi comes to the seder. We're going to talk about that in a second. So one of the reasons why it's called Eliyahu Navi's cup is because you see on the screen Tishbi Yitaretz Kushis Vabayis. Tishbi is going to answer all the answers. Like the Vilna Gaon says, text number 4. The Vilna Gaon says that Mashiach's coming when in a Chabad class we're quoting the Vilna Gaon. Vilna Gaon says in text number 4 is that we have these issues. We don't know what to do. So Eliyahu. So we're coming, and Eliyahu is going to answer the question for us. But now we have another question. What? All the other mitzvahs. Hey, Ron. Hey, grab a chair. All the other mitzvah, all the other cups of wine is a mitzvah. Everybody gets their own cup, right? Usually on Shabbos, one person makes a kiddush for everybody. But on Pesach, the mitzvah is everyone drinks their own cup. Even if you don't recite the kiddush, you have to drink your own cup, right? But don't leave, Ron. I have to give you matzah. Right? So if the mitzvah is here, it's so important. How come not everybody? Shouldn't everybody pour their own cup? Yeah? No?
No, you pour for somebody else.
No, meaning by the 4 cups, everyone gets their own cup. But Eliyahu Navi, we're giving him only 1 cup. If it's so important, then why all of a sudden by Eliyahu Navi's cup, 1 cup is good for the whole table? Why shouldn't we make everybody pour a 5th cup?
I see. Everybody should have a cup for your. The question is, why is it that only 1 cup is on the table for Eliyahu? Why don't we?
For the entire table.
Participant in the seder have a 5th cup for Eliyahu.
Capish?
Don't be wasting wine.
No, you pour back. Yeah. So it says, by the way, it's written. So Eliyahu Navi comes to every seder. If you're great enough, you see him. The tzaddikim there would see him, talk to him. So there's one tzaddik, I don't remember who it was. He said everybody knew Eliyahu Navi came. So students would always come and say, "Can we join you seder?" He said, "Sure, why not?" For some reason, whenever the students came, whichever student it was, they would fall into a deep slumber and wake up after the seder was over. Right? Yeah. Okay, let's move on to another theory. Let's get into an interesting idea. Did you know that it seems that this thing of Eliyahu Navi is not a long-standing tradition? It hasn't been around forever. It's a recent invention.
Recent meaning in the last
Couple hundred
years.
The past couple hundred years.
Oh, couple hundred.
I mean, we've been doing this for
Well,
three and a half.
that's very recent.
We've been doing this for 3,500 years. You know what's the only time we didn't have a Passover Seder? No. What's the only time in history Jewish people didn't celebrate Pesach?
When the Second Temple was destroyed?
No.
It's a good game.
Last year when it was kind of windy and rainy.
Purim. Remember when Esther tells Mordechai to fast for 3 days? The 3rd day of the fast was the first day of Pesach. And he only kept 1 day. He didn't keep 2 days. And the Jewish people is the only time in history the Jewish people did not. In fact, there's a very interesting medrash about how to make up for it. It's interesting. Anyway, so let's get into the story of Pesach a little bit, or let's get into the story of Eliyahu, and let's find out why he is associated with Pesach. So I said before, Eliyahu appears on the scene, and Eliyahu did not take garbage from anybody. He didn't care how powerful you were. He didn't care how much you threatened him. Now, Eliyahu didn't live with the well-behaved Jews. He lived with the naughty Jews. We know that the northern kingdom was exiled 150 years before the southern kingdom, and they were very, very. Most of the time, the northern kingdom was very bad. One of the most famous kings of the northern kingdom was a guy named Achav, and married to Jezebel. Jezebel? Right, in English? Jezebel. Jezebel was not a Jewish woman. She was a princess from another kingdom. And Achav decided to marry her. And she said, yeah, I believe in God, yada, yada, yada. And she brought with her the idolatry, especially the idolatry of a guy, of an idol called Baal. B-A-apostrophe-A-L. Baal. And this was, for whatever reason, not for tonight's class, the Jewish people fell in love with this idolatry. It swept the entire northern kingdom, and Achav didn't allow Jews to go to the southern kingdom because they're with the base of English, and if you're serving God, it's a problem. And he didn't. And the biggest problem was you had the prophets back then. Prophecy was pretty. There were more than one prophet. There was a leader, but there was multiple prophets, and they were going around saying that this Baal thing is full of garbage. So what did Jezebel and Achav decide to do? They decided that they're going to kill the prophets, and that's what they did. Eliyahu Navi's life was in danger. This is the story with Achav. So they believed this Baal controlled, I think, fertility and rain and all that. So Eliyahu Navi says to them, "You think these guys control rain? It doesn't rain until I say it rains." You understand? That's Eliyahu Navi. He went and he told them in their face, and it didn't rain for 3 years until they came to Eliyahu and they begged him. Yeah, and then we know the story where he has the whole showdown on Mount Carmel with with the prophets of the Baal. Whoever can bring fire down from heaven is the real God. That's Eliyahu Navi too. Eliyahu Navi resurrects a kid from the dead. A kid dies, and this is not medrash. This is straight out. Eliyahu Navi prays to God. Obviously, everything's with God's help, and the kid comes back to life. Eliyahu Navi splits the water. By the way, Eliyahu Navi is, and by the way, Eliyahu Navi doesn't die. There's also in the text. It says Eliyahu Navi crosses the Jordan with Elisha together, and he says, "Okay, it's time for me to leave you." And all of a sudden, a chariot of fire comes. Eliyahu gets on the chariot of fire, and the chariot of fire goes up to heaven, and he throws down his cloak and the staff to Elisha. So Eliyahu Navi doesn't die, and that's why we have this tradition that whenever the Jewish people are in a cinch, Eliyahu Navi comes in multiple disguises and everything else. Now, one of the things happened with Eliyahu Navi is a few things. When the Jewish people were serving idols, remember I told you Eliyahu Navi was a zealot and didn't like. So Eliyahu Navi had to escape from Achav and Jezebel. And where did he escape to? He couldn't escape to the southern kingdom because he didn't want to make a civil war. He knew that Achav was going to go. So he escaped to Mount Sinai. Now, why do you have to run all the way to Mount Sinai? He couldn't find a different mountain. He escapes to Mount Sinai. The significance of it. He comes to God and he says, "Your people are no good. Your experiment has failed. Get a new people. They've rejected your covenant." And God said, whoa. Sinner, yeah. Reject the covenant? No. And ever since then, Eliyahu Navi has been punished, so to speak, not punished, but he is made to bear witness to when the Jewish people recertify the covenant, which is two times in a Jewish person's life. Number one, a bris milah. Bris actually means covenant. That's why we have a chair of Elio, because he has to come. He's forced to come to the bris. And number two, at the seder. The seder marks when we left Egypt to become a people to get it there. So Elio Navi has to come. And then God says, and by the way, you're going to be there at the end. When the Jewish people, you predicted the Jewish people are going to be go the ways of all the other nations. You're going to be there at the end to tell them, listen, guys, you made it, you outlasted, and Eliyahu Navi is going to herald the coming of Mashiach. Like the famous, the last couple of verses in the entire Tanakh is, you see that Tanakh, in the entire Navi, is Malachi, the last of the prophets, is Hinei, verse 5, Hinei Anachi Shalech Lachem. Hashem says, I'm going to send to you, Eliyahu Navi. It says, L'fnei bo yom Hashem, before the day of God comes. When's the day of God? It says, that's Mashiach. The Rebbe actually one time spoke a very interesting idea. So one of the 13 principles of faith is that we believe Mashiach can come at any day. But if Eliyahu Navi is coming before Mashiach comes, then, and he didn't come today, that means I don't believe Mashiach came today. So which one is it? Is Eliyahu Navi coming before Mashiach or after? So the rabbis say it depends if he comes on time or early. Well, it's interesting conversation.
Depends on traffic.
Depends on traffic, exactly. You've been in Israel. You know how bad it is.
I think it depends on his Rolex.
Yeah, exactly. So this idea that Eliyahu Navi is bound to announce the coming of Mashiach shows up in multiple places. Rashi in Leviticus, at the end of Leviticus 25, I think it is 26, where it goes through all the all the consequences that what's going to happen if the Jewish people don't listen. So at the end, Hashem says, although I'm going to punish you and everything else. You see in verse 6, it says, "V'zacharti is brisi Yaakov." I'm going to remember the covenant of Yaakov. Now, if you look in the Hebrew, on the top line, Yaakov over there is spelled Yud Ayin Kuf Vav Vez. There's a Vav there. Yeah. Most of the time, the Yaakov's name is spelled, it's without a Vav. Usually, Yaakov is spelled Yud Ayin Kuf Vez. So, Rashi quotes the Medrash. It says that there are 5 times Yaakov's name is written Mole, full, and there are 5 times Eliyahu Navi is written without a Vav. So you could read the Hey, you could have the 3 dots slanted, Shuruk. So Yaakov was saying, listen here, I'm holding on to 5 letters of your name because your job is to let my kids know Mashiach's coming. Now let me ask you a question. If you were going to bet, what's the best time for Mashiach to come? The best time of the year. What time would you say? The most propitious, appropriate time for Mashiach to come.
Summertime, everybody's going to be at the beach. They're going to be comfortable. They're going to be receptive.
I revoke your right to answer.
Well, 2 choices: Passover, Pesach,
or
Rosh Hashanah.
Hayel is right. Answer is Pesach. And Pesach, in fact, the name of the month is Nisan, miracle. Pesach is the month of redemption. So, in fact, it says, the famous Gemara, Rosh Hashanah, which says, in Nisan the Jewish people were redeemed, and in Nisan they will be redeemed. And on Pesach we're going to read that when Hashem struck the Egyptians, the firstborn, it says it's called Leil Shemurim. The night of guarding. What does it say? Night of anticipation. That's not. Leil Shemurim means a guarded night. What does it mean? So one explanation is that's the night that God protects the Jewish people. In fact, there's a tradition. Is it there? Yeah, you see in text number 8. There's some people have the tradition not to lock their doors at night. That night. the night of Pesach, they don't lock the doors. But in fact, it says it's brought in the code of Jewish law that don't even live in a safe neighborhood. You can't leave your door open, and God's going to protect you. You're not allowed to. A person's not allowed to, what do you call it? Beg for a miracle or rely on a miracle, right? But another way of looking at it, as Leil Shemurim is a night of protection, it's also, Shemurim is guarded or put aside. That this is a night that's God's, that's why they translated it as anticipated. That God's putting it aside, that this is the night, this is a good time to be redeemed. And that's why we have the cup of Elio. Because Elio, Navi is going to come, and he's going to tell us, guys, Mashiach's here. What's the first thing you're going to do? Mashiach's here. Zach l'chaim. Right? Maybe Elio Navi doesn't drink it's Pesach. Otherwise, we'd serve him whiskey. Right? So you see, actually, it's text number 8. We leave the door open, but that's why we have the cup of Elio, because Elio Navi is going to tell us Mashiach's coming. All right. So far, so good. So now there comes the question and says, that's so beautiful. Do you know how long the Jewish people were believing in Mashiach? Well, since
the years.
Since the beginning. Yeah. By the way, the concept of Mashiach is not a new idea. Even when the Jewish people were going out of Mitzrayim, the concept of living in a perfected world where there will be no sin, only Torah. That's why Moshe wanted to go into the land of Israel. He wanted to, start the process. Hashem told Moshe, "You're holding there, but everyone is way behind." So Moshe said, "Okay, they're not ready. I'll wait here until they are." So why did the custom start recently, in the past few hundred years? How come this custom didn't start a long time ago? Right? It seems like a very good custom. And then another question says, who do you think you are to invent new customs? Imagine if it wasn't good enough for those guys. If the people living in Babylonia, right? The Gemara was written. The Jews lived in Babylonia. It's after the destruction of the Second Temple. They didn't have a cup of Elio. What, you think we want Mashiach more than they want Mashiach? You think so?
Non-Jews believe Mashiach already came.
Yeah.
Except that there's killings all over the place.
Exactly. That's by the way, Nachmanides. Pass me the word, please. Are you familiar with the debate of Nachmanides? So in 13 or in 12 something, no, he didn't live. Anyway, Nachmanides was forced into a debate by a Jewish a Meshumad, a guy who converted to Christianity. This guy's name was Pablo Cristiani. That's the name he took upon himself. And he went to the king of Spain. I think it was James of Castile. And these guys didn't know how to read Hebrew, obviously. They probably didn't even know how to read Latin. And he told him, I can prove the truth of that guy from the Gemara. I can prove it. And so the king, now Nachmanides was a friend of the king, good friend of the king. He says, I don't want to debate. No, you have to debate. So he said, but if I'm going to debate, I'm going to say things that, the church is not going to like. So the king said, I'll protect you. It's the only debate in history, until modern times, where a Jew was able to speak with a full mouth. What in Nachmanides every day at the end, it was a 3-day debate. At the end of the day, he wrote down what that guy said and what he responded. Well, it's not a debate. It's a murder scene. He tears the guy apart, and not only that guy, he tears Christian theology apart. Then Nachmanides got in trouble. Why? Because the church got very upset. Because it wasn't just a debate. He embarrassed him. In everything that like Ron said, right? Like Nachmanides said, if this is Messiah, this is peace. Woe to the world if this is post-Messianic times. At least by us, we believe in a better time to come. That's one of the things he said. I mean, the church was so embarrassed. So they needed to pin something on Nachmanides. So they said, we allowed you to speak. We didn't allow you to write it down. And Nachmanides had to escape to Israel. Nachmanides was a wealthy man, and he had to run away to Israel. In fact, the synagogue, he bought land in the, I know we're getting off topic here, but he bought land in the old city. When Nachmanides came to the old city in the 1200s, there wasn't a minion of Jews that lived in the old city, no? I think he was number 7 or number 8 man. And he went, he was number 7. He got 2 Jews who lived in Hebron, I think, and a Jew who lived in Shechem. And he bought land, and it was called the Ramban's shul. And then in 1948, for the audacity of declaring statehood, the Jordanians destroyed the synagogue. If you remember, when were you in Israel the first time?
67.
So if you remember 67, in the old city, if you remember, there was an arch, just an arch.
The war.
There was a shul there at one time. And
That was
Yeah.
Ramban Shul. That was the Ramban Shul. Now it's rebuilt. Now there was just a
There's
pole.
huge
When I
shul
was
there
there,
now.
when I was there in '94 for my bar mitzvah, they were rebuilding it. But for years, if you walked into the Jewish quarter, into the square there was just an arch. But so that, by the way, that's anyway. We went a little off topic. So the question is, and if you look at text number 9a and 9b, the question gets a lot stronger. It says like the famous Gemara, and you guys heard me mention this Gemara.
Yochanan ben Zakkai?
Zakkai.
That guy.
He said, if the early generations are angels, then we're men. And if they're men, we're donkeys. And not the special donkeys. It says there was a donkey, a Pinchas ben Yair, that didn't want to eat from someone else's food because it wasn't tithe. And you see there, they had the hearts of a hole, we have the hearts of a needle. So basically the question is, how can we, if you look at text number 10, by the way, text number 10, the Vilna Gaon talks about even, it gives very vivid terms, how we are so downtrodden, and he goes through very, very vivid terms, how much generations have gotten so much worse. So if they didn't institute this custom, how can we institute this custom? Okay? So far, so good? Good? You understand? So the Rebbe says, and by the way, today's a very appropriate time to learn what the Rebbe says, because tonight is the Rebbe's birthday. Tonight is the 11th of Nisan, tonight and tomorrow. So we all should take upon ourselves to do an extra mitzvah. That is the best birthday present that the Rebbe can have, is when we do a mitzvah. Learn a little extra, that'll bring the Rebbe a tremendous nachas. So the Rebbe says, it's true that we are in a lower state. Yeah, emes. Why? And we learn less because our capacity is less. But you know what comes with less sophistication? Simplicity. And so you know what comes with simplicity? Sincerity. So we do it because, I'll tell you a story. There was a guy who came to a parsha class, and he learned that that in the Beis Hamikdash there was the bread in the Beis Hamikdash. It was a very important part of the service. He came home and he told his wife, "I learned about this in class," and I think I would like to bring this sacrifice, but we don't have a temple. So what's the closest thing to God? The ark. So what would he do? He took these 2 loaves of bread, and he put it in the ark. And he figured if the loaves of bread are gone, then God has accepted. So he went Thursday night. He put the loaves of bread. He comes to Shul Friday morning, and the loaves are gone. What he didn't know was this guy was down on his luck and he was starving, and he was afraid to come home with nothing. He came and he went to pray to God. And where are you going to pray to God? What's the best place to pray to God? By the ark. He says, God, please help me. He opens up the ark and bam, 2 loaves of bread. And every week, this repeated. One week, the guy came to shul, and as he was putting the 2 loaves of bread, one of the people in the shul, either the beadle, the shamish, said, "What are you doing?" Sheepishly told him, says, "What are you, an idiot? What are you, fool? Putting bread?" He derided him, made fun of him, and anything else. And something happened to the guy, and the guy says, so the rabbi called, I forgot who the rabbi was, called him and said, "You're making fun of him, but this guy was serving Hashem. You better go ask him forgiveness, because you're in big trouble. This guy was serving God. Yeah, it was simplistic and everything else, but he wanted to bring a sacrifice." The Rebbe says the problem with people, smart people, is that they're smart. It's very hard for them to feel sincere, and totally buy in, because their own intellect is getting in the way. We don't have that problem, because compared to them, we're donkeys, right? Donkeys don't have intellect. So we have this sincerity. So we look at what Tzaddik Lublin says in text number 11. Right, this is the answer. It says, despite the fact that we're living in the final era before the coming Mashiach, and the souls diminish in every passing generation, our hearts should not falter. Consider what happened to our ancestors during their exile. It was specifically during the exile that they attained all the greatest levels of holiness. So that's what Hashem's will. So I heard in the name of the Hizra Pesach that although the souls diminish, nevertheless the inner core remains pure. How is it possible? How is it possible that we can accomplish something that our forefathers didn't? So the Rebbe spoke about this, and he gave an analogy. In fact, the singer Avram Fried says that he would stand by Farbrengen, and the Rebbe would say a concept, and he would come up with an idea for a song. And he had a song called "On Giant Shoulders." It's a great song, beautiful song. And the Rebbe gave this analogy you see in text number 12. He says there was once a father and a son, a giant and a son, who wanted to go see the king. And they came to the palace, and there are all these great walls surrounding the palace, and the king and the giant can't see over the walls. So what does he do? He puts his son on his shoulders, and his son can see over. And he tells his son, "Tell me what you see." Right? So yes, the child can perceive, but only because he's standing on the shoulders of the giant. So the Rebbe said, same thing is, compared to the other generations, people would ask this question to the Rebbe all the time. He says, how is it possible we're going to bring Mashiach if the previous generations didn't bring Mashiach? The Rebbe said, because you're looking at it wrong. You're looking at it as we stand independently. No, you stand on the shoulders of all your parents and your grandparents, and it's not just you. It's, the Rambam famously says, every single person has to view himself as his mitzvah is going to tip the scales for the entire world. I mean, all our efforts of all the generations throughout the years, it's accumulating until we've done what we have to do. It's like you said, a dwarf, a child, on top of, and this is what it is. We are the generation of Mashiach. The Rebbe would always say. So why are we the generation to add the cup of Mashiach? Because of that. Because no one feels Mashiach more than us. Because why? Because all the generations they could lay back, right? They had Torah, they had mitzvah. I don't know what they had, right? They had things to lay back. They had beautiful Jewish communities, right? Prague and yeshivas, right? All this. What do we have now? What do we have? What Jewish super nothing? We said, God, we're stripped bare. We got nothing. Our Torah learning is shvach. Our davening, Our mitzvahs. It's time. There's nothing more we can give you. My brother went to Russia in 1991. Chabad flew my brothers out to do a camp. So this was the full communism. People had no money. My brother walks over to a guy. He's wearing an army uniform. Looked good. He says, I'll give you $5, $10, $20. I can't remember what it was. It was bupkis. It was pittance. It was $5 for your uniform. The guy got undressed in the street. He walked home in his underwear. I remember my brother. I used to dress up for Purim a minute. My brother got a Navy. He had hats. Yeah, from the Navy, from the Air Force. Yeah, had boots. Yeah. And for bupkis, right? So throughout the generations, we've lost anything, all of our beauty and our grandeur. So now's the time. Hashem said, we're standing in our gatkes. Says so. We have the greatest belief in the coming of Mashiach. Let's see text number 13. Wrap it up. The Rebbe says, the belief in Mashiach's coming. There we are. Yeah, the belief in Mashiach's coming is present in every Jew. All Jews are maminim benim maminim. The believers, the children of believers, regardless of the level of the divine service. But we believe the coming of Mashiach. That's what belief is. It's not a question of service. It's something in you, and not only faith when he will eventually come, but also the actual anticipation of his arrival. I once heard there was a guy when I was in Israel a long time ago. There was a guy. He was a kohen. He bought an apartment in the old city because he didn't just believe Mashiach's coming. He really believed it. And he wanted to be ready to serve in the temple. So he bought an apartment in the old city. I mean, that's called. Yeah. Now we all possess this faith, the Rebbe says, because it's a mitzvah. Moreover, the closer we find ourselves at the time of Mashiach, the stronger and brighter this faith grows amongst the Jewish people. This is why in later generations we have the cup of Elio. Because Elio represents Mashiach, it represents better times. So it's in our time that we are the generation of Mashiach. We lack this sophistication. Our qualities aren't because of an accomplishment. Our qualities are we're a Jewish person, and we have the soul connection. So what's the motivation now? The Rebbe would always say, just do one more mitzvah. Because think about it. What more could God want from us? What haven't we proven yet? Right? We still believe in Him. We're still doing it. After everything. There's not a situation that God hasn't put us through that we haven't come out the other side, still believing, still practicing. So obviously there's only some small to do. Like that, we'll end off with the example that the previous Rebbe gave. It says there's like, for example, you have soldiers. You guys, there's the soldiers who are standing for inspection, right? They clean the uniform, and what's the last thing they got to do? They shine their buttons. They're ready, right before inspection. They shine. So the previous Rebbe says we also too must shine our buttons. Get ready for Mashiach. So every Yid, especially in honor of the Rebbe's birthday, let's give the Rebbe a present, and let's take upon ourselves a mitzvah, a little extra learning, a little extra charity, something to give the Rebbe nachas. Key points, right? We said precisely because of our simplicity that we hold the power. All right, here we go. Custom to pour the fifth cup at the seder, not to drink it. This is called Elio's cup. Now, why do we drink Elio's cup? So first we said, well, because there's an argument, 4 or 5. We said, yeah, but then why is it called Elio's cup? And why doesn't everyone drink it? So we said, well, now Elio's job, primary role is to herald the coming of Mashiach. So others explain that the cup is anticipation of Mashiach, and something which not at Pesach is the best time for Mashiach to come. So you say, what? I just cooked, right? Right. By the way, this is a true story. A guy came home one time from a class. Simple guy. We're talking about Jews who knew very little. Came home and said, the rabbi said Mashiach's coming. We're all going to move to Israel. So he says, let's go back and tell the rabbi that we just finished paying the mortgage and the cow. Now's not a good time for Mashiach to come. So despite, and he said, despite our simplicity, our sincere and pretentious efforts have unique power to pave the way for the ultimate redemption. We become speedily in our dates. I want to have a chag kosher v'samech, happy and a kosher Pesach. We should really merit to have the seder in Jerusalem. Ira?
I